Hi, and welcome back. I'm excited for today's show as I have my very first guest, and it's John Benkert of CPR Tools and Cygent. John is an expert on data destruction and recovery as well as cybersecurity, and he had so much information to share that I broke the interview up into two separate episodes. So for today's episode, part one, we're going to focus on data destruction and recovery, two things that most people don't think about until it's too late. Welcome to the Carrie Kursky Show, your partner in the fight against identity theft, fraud, and cyber threats. I'm your host, Carrie Kursky. So good morning and welcome to the Carrie Kursky Show. And I have a special guest with me today. His name is John Benkert. John, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, good morning, everybody. As Carrie said, my name is John Benkert. I'm kind of a technology guy. I was in the Air Force for 20 years. Stationed all over the world. And that's really where I got into technology. I'm from a small town in Ohio, so I wouldn't have had that opportunity had I not joined the military back in the early 80s. And all throughout my career in the military, I got to use different kinds of technology and computers, and I really just fell in love with them. I left the military, retired in the military from 2004, worked at NSA for a little bit, at the National Security Agency there for a little bit, where again, I got into data recovery and data removal and how to do that and for the government. And then I left there and came down to Florida, and my wife and I went to work for a business, CPR Tools. And then we bought the business in 2011. It's a data recovery forensics company. And so that's kind of how I got started. And that's a little bit about me, I guess. Pretty quick, huh?
Yeah, and John, one of the things that one of your companies, CPR Tools, offers that I really like is you do data destruction and recovery. For people that are unfamiliar, data destruction is when you have an old device and you want to get rid of it. You need to make sure your information is removed off of it. And then recovery is if, you drop your phone in the water, and then you have to recover the information off of it, or your hard drive crashes, whatever. But John, let's talk about, I know you and I have had conversations offline about, the Hollywood version of how to remove information off of your devices. So let's talk about some of those myths, and then we'll get into what actually works. So what are some of the big myths? I know the big one is the magnets around the door frame. Let's talk about that one.
Yeah. So I mean, magnets, there are two types of media, actually three types of media, right, that people have today. Now, one of the media that we probably don't have as much around us today, optical media. So that would be CDs, DVDs, those types of things, Blu-ray discs, those types of things. And we probably don't have those as much today. Obviously, people don't use CDs as much as they used to, and don't write DVDs anymore. But then there's magnetic media, and magnetic media actually goes back way before any of the other types. And it was your floppy disks back in the early 80s and 70s. We had 8-inch floppies, and then we had 5 1/4 inch floppies, and then we had 3.5 inch floppy disks. So those were magnetic media. And then we also had spinning hard drives, and we have those still today. Those are still in the market today, and those are also magnetic. So basically, they're written. They have heads, read and write heads, and those heads are used to flip the bits, either a positive or negatively charged bit, and that's how data is written to those magnetic media. And then we have solid state media, and solid state media are things like your devices, like your phone, and you couldn't see that there, but it's your phone and all those types of things that are out there, thumb drives, flash drives, SD cards, things like that. So that's solid state media. So the technology of magnetic media with the spinning hard drives and the floppy disk, people in olden times, back in the 80s and 90s, would use, and still do today, use magnets to get rid of that data. The problem with walking through a doorway, first of all, the magnets, if you have a hard drive or a laptop or something in your hand, like an SD card or something, or I'm sorry, a floppy disk or something, and you walk through a doorway, those magnets have to be really strong to get rid of that data. And it's just not going to work. It's not feasible.
You're telling us Hollywood's not reliable?
Well, and you also can't do a data recovery in 3 minutes. So yeah, Hollywood, when you watch the NCISs and the FBI shows, they tend to squeeze everything down. They have commercials to pay for the shows, and they only have 45 minutes, so they have to make it really look good. But yeah, those types of things. A lot of people I've been on panels before. We've discussed. Very smart people have talked about throwing hard drives in water and salt water. All of that can be recovered, and actually, in that case, the salt water kind of preserves it. So although it does rust out some of the
Oh,
components,
wow.
and depending on how long it's been in the water, we've had great success in our company with recovering these types of things.
And tell us a little bit more. So what are some of the things that are most unusual that your company's done as far as trying to recover data? And then also let's talk about, some people say, well, what if you, again, in Hollywood, you shoot up the hard drive or you smash it with a hammer, does that work as well? I mean, how can you destroy the hard drive? Or let's talk about some of the things where you've recovered off maybe some of these smashed hard drives.
Okay, sure. Yeah. So some of the, I mean, I don't know if you call them the weirdest ones that we've seen. I mean, we've seen where we've had family members come in and got mad at other family members, and through laptops in the Caloosahatchee River. We've had thumb drives, right? Your flash drives. People run them over with lawnmowers and then
Oh my
bring them
gosh.
in. I don't. They fall out of their pockets. I don't know if it's on purpose or not. We don't typically find out the whole story, and people never want to tell us the truth when it comes to that stuff.
True.
They just want their data back. But those are some of the weirds one we've seen. But we've done some gut wrenching ones as well. We just recently had one come in, but it's the second time where a family member has passed, and the surviving family members want to get the photos and things off the phone, just to cherish those and go through those. And we just had that last week again, and that's tricky, especially with today's technology and today's phones, without a passcode, and in fact everything's encrypted, and without that passcode it's hard to do. But we certainly have had success in those areas, so those are typically happy endings for the folks. As far as getting rid of your data, I mean, it really, a lot of people get hung up, Carrie, on the government way and the specs that the government puts out there. And to be quite honest with you, most of us don't have to worry about that. We're not protecting data to that degree, right? If I have my home computer, my laptop, I may have a couple personal things that I would never want anyone to see, but really, that's not the bulk of your information that you store. So, using a hammer to do it, although it's excessive in my opinion, certainly if you take a hammer to a hard drive and smash the platters, it's going to make it very difficult. Notice I didn't say it's impossible.
Right.
We have the capabilities to retrieve, and we have the capabilities to retrieve data back from shredded media, from things that have been shot with bullets. But for the normal user, if you want to take your hard drive out and shoot it with a gun in the field, and then throw it in the trash or recycle it is a better way to do it, then that's going to work for you, right? I mean, you may have some pictures that you don't want anybody else to see, but really other than that, it's an expensive process to recover it. So most people, I'm not going to come grab your hard drive out of the trash and bring it to CPR Tools and say, hey, it's going to cost $50,000 to recover, but I want Carrie's pictures. It's just not going to happen. So I think that's okay. But really, just as with the government, the smartest way to do it is to override it, to use a piece of software or a hardware tool. There are free ones out there to overwrite the data. That's much better than shooting it or shredding it. And you can resell them. And that's a big key that we try to tell people is you can go on eBay and people buy old hard drives. As a data recovery company, we buy old hard drives off of eBay because we need them for parts. So if a customer brings in a hard drive or a phone or a tablet and we need parts, first place we go is eBay. We have vendors as well that recycle that we buy from, but eBay is a great place to do that. So you can make some extra money off of your old tech. You just want to make sure your data is gone.
Now, is there some simple technique? I know sometimes like on the iPhone where you can, reset the settings to original. Mm-hmm. Would that be sufficient enough? Or what about even on, on a laptop when they say reformat the hard drive? Does that really do it enough, or a couple other steps that should be taken?
So I guess we'll talk about phones first because that's pretty popular. So if you just do an actual reset with your Apple or your Android, that is good enough. Your data is not going to be recoverable unless somebody wants to bring it to us and pay us, like I said, an awful large amount. Right? If it's been reset, odds are we can't get the data back, but if we could, it's going to take techniques that are very expensive. Okay. So for phones, simply do your reset, you're good. iPads, all of those things, do your reset, you're good. For hard drives, when you're doing a reformat, there are two types of formats for folks. And if you've ever formatted a floppy drive, or a thumb drive or something like that on your computer, there's a quick format, and then there's just the regular format. And all the quick format does really is just kind of hide the files, right? it takes those, it gives you a new file system, NTFS or exFAT or whatever. But the files themselves really are still there. So they could be recovered. But if you do the full format, then they are unrecoverable. A full format also checks bad sectors. So it'll look for bad sectors and put any of the bad sectors in the list where they go so they can't be reused. So
Okay.
doing a full format's fine. It's typically you're not going to get data back from there.
So if someone was to do a full format, do they just go online, do a Google search based on their device of how to do it, or there are locations that you'd recommend them to go to on instructions how to do it?
So you can just do it with your Windows device. So in Windows Explorer, as long as it's not your operating system drive, right? So you can't reformat your OS drive, or you're going to lose your OS and it's going to die in the middle of it.
Right.
So as long as it's not your operating system drive, the drive that your Windows system is on, you can simply find it, right click on it, or go into the disk management tool and then right click on that and do a format. It's really easy to do. If you want to do something outside of the computer, outside of the operating system, then there's software certainly that you could buy. In that case, I wouldn't recommend a format. I would just recommend downloading a free utility to wipe the disk, to erase the disk.
Okay, and do you have resources or recommendations for some of those free ones that we can post in the show notes for people to get access to, or maybe just some brands to look for?
Yeah, we can do that. I typically don't like to recommend
Sure.
things because when they don't work. And when I say that, it's typically user error that they didn't work. And also you really do have to be careful with free utilities, right? It's just like anything else if it's too good to be true, but there are some free utilities out there, and I'll certainly give you some names and some links of some utilities that can be used. We also, I'm happy any of your users can email us and we'll send it to them for free, no charge. So.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so we had a little bit of a glitch in the audio there. So John said, any of you listeners out there, if you're interested in doing it, his company does offer it. So we'll make sure and put the contact information in the show notes so you can reach out to John and his team and talk about, overwriting for a device that you're looking to get rid of. So let's talk about with the data recovery, because I know that's a big one where people don't often back up somewhere else, and then when something goes wrong, they're calling you and they're paying a lot of money saying whatever it takes, just get this information back. So what are some things that you would recommend for people to do proactively before they end up not being able to get access to that information they need?
Okay, so yeah, obviously the cloud is a great option for people today. If you have a Windows device or an Apple device, you have free space, and I think it's 5 gigs or 15 gigabytes of space that you can use. So certainly you should take advantage of that. Some people don't want to store data in the cloud. They're scared for their privacy. They don't know who has access to it. I get it. I understand it. Coming with the background that I come from with the government, I understand that scared. That fright that you're feeling. So you can also just buy a hard drive, buy an external USB device, and connect that to your computer through USB. You can set up in Windows or Apple, either one, to back up the data on a weekly basis, a daily basis, whatever you choose. It's easy to set up. You can Google for instructions on that, and then just set it up and let it do its thing. And then when you're going to be offline for long periods of time, I would recommend unplugging the device. And that stops hackers from being able to access it with ransomware and viruses and malware and things like that.
Good point. That was going to be my next question about with the ransomware. Yeah.
We know each other too well.
Exactly. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Join us next week for part 2 of my interview with John as he discusses cybersecurity for consumers and small businesses. With many of us working from home, cyber threats are on the rise. So John's going to share some tips and resources to stay safe from those cyber threats. Until next time, stay safe.